Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 154th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and coming a little bit later will be my co-host, Justin Raffoff. He's actually at the Wilson Boys Water Polo end-of-the-season banquet, and we'll be touching more about the success of the Boys Water Polo team a little bit later. Definitely once Justin joins me here this evening. So I'll be starting you off this week talking our standard talk as we do every week, which is going to be focused mostly on football here this evening. And we're going to spend a little bit of time on college football, not just Penn State, but also on a couple of other interesting plays that happened yesterday in the college football world. A couple of head scratchers, some historical blunders that one was just a really, what are you doing, kid? That was a mistake. And the other actually cost the team a game. 2 fumbles in the last 4 plays for a top 5 team in the nation goes down as a result of it right at the end of the game. So I'm going to show you the video from those. We're going to talk about those events and as well as talk on Penn State, Wilson, NFL, and then we'll talk a little bit about Wilson Water Polo as well. So again, if you're just joining me, my name is Joe Mays. I'm one of your hosts. Justin will be along in a little bit. Again, he's finishing up at his end of the water polo banquet, and he'll be joining me momentarily. So first off, I guess we'll talk a little bit here about the ways that you can contact us. Again, this evening we're not going to be able to take phone calls as the setup requires both hosts to be here and both cell phones to be active. So no phone calls this evening, but we will still be taking your questions, your comments, anything you'd like to say to us via the Mays Sandwich Shop email inbox. Joe Mays and J-Raff at gmail.com. Again, Joe Mays and J-Raff at gmail.com. And we also monitor our Facebook fan page and our Twitter account during the show. So if you're into the social media thing, you can find our fan page on Facebook, like us there, Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. And on Twitter, we have an active account at Joe Mays and J-Raff. We have both up during the show, so if that's a quick and easy way that you can interact with us, go ahead and have at it. We also have the email up. But again, no phone this evening. Do not call to get on the air. We will not be able to take it. But there's a bunch of other ways you can contact us, and I hope you do that. All right, first off, let's start out with Penn State because it's going to be very, very brief here. They went to Indiana yesterday on a 4-game losing streak, and just not a lot going right on the field for Penn State football. Start the season 4-0, got a little bit scrappy against Rutgers, but came out on top. Start the season undefeated. Then you have a 4-game swoon where you just look awful against Northwestern. You get beat up by Michigan. You fight hard against Ohio State but lose in overtime. And then last week, the 1-point setback to Maryland, a team that's only beaten Penn State now twice. There was also 2 bye weeks in there, so it's been over a month and a half since Penn State had won. But that leads us to the game yesterday. And there they were walking off the field in Indiana and Bloomington as victors finally for the first time in 6 or 7 weeks. Penn State football has won a game on the field, and they improved to 5-4, 1 game away from bowl eligibility, which I'm certain they will get a chance to go to a bowl if they get to 6 wins. They have 3 games left to do so. They host Temple next weekend, a noon kickoff. And then they travel to Illinois the following Saturday before returning home the Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend to host Michigan State who fell last night to Ohio State, pretty much ending any chances the Big Ten had of putting someone into the first ever four-team big boys, football bowl subdivision, whatever you want to call it, playoff to gain it, to see who's going to be the national champion. So a Big Ten team is likely going to be shut out of those top four, and even if Michigan State had won, there was no guarantee at one loss that they were going to make it. But anyways, Penn State was able to win yesterday in Indiana. It was an ugly, ugly game. Turnovers, penalties, slow, awful offenses. A determined defense once again led the way for Penn State. But just not a very good showing once again by the offensive coaching staff, Christian Hackenberg. Not a lot going for Akil Lynch, the offensive line, despite the sporadic return of Miles Diefenbach, who was in and out of the game. The offensive line looked awful again. Donovan Smith, the left tackle, missed his second straight game with a concussion. So just not a lot to look forward to offensively. However, there was one big play, and that was a 92-yard rushing touchdown by Bill Belton. And I believe that was tied for or set a new Penn State rushing record. There was, I think, a non-scoring rush of that long by, I think, Blair Thomas, but this is the longest rushing play for a score. The previous record was 90 yards. Belton's yesterday was 92. So that was kind of the lone bright spot in Penn State's win yesterday in terms of the offense, because Christian Hackenberg and the wide receivers just really couldn't get anything going. When there's only 20 points scored total between both teams, it wasn't exactly an offensive showcase. But Hackenberg got enough done. I mean, he had 2 interceptions again with no touchdowns this time. One of them was a deflected pass, so probably not exactly his fault. But, he only threw for 168 yards. And despite the team rushing for 162, Hackenberg lost 22 because he was sacked numerous times. Let's see if I can figure out the number here. It doesn't look like they have it listed on the stats page, so I don't know how many times he was sacked, but a number of times. My guess is probably at least 3 or 4. I know he was sacked twice in the first quarter. Indiana extended their streak of games with a sack to like 21 or something like that, and then I believe is the longest or one of the longest streaks in the nation. Hackenberg completed less than 50% of his passes. He was 12 of 29. So just not a great game for the passing offense. No receiver had more than 39 yards. Now, Bill Belton was able to rush for 137 yards, but like I said, that most of that came on one rush, a 92-yard rush and touchdown by him. So other than the 92 rushing yard touchdown, he had, 45 yards on 15 carries. So about 3 yards a carry. That 1 yard... that one rushing touchdown boosted his average to almost 9 per attempt. So Akil Lynch, not much better. 13 carries, 47 yards, a 3.6 average. His long was a 20-yard burst. So again, really not much going at all. Penn State ran almost 70 plays and only was able to score 13 points. But, bright spot, looking on the bright side, Penn State defense, absolutely outstanding once more. And there's not too much else to say. Sam Ficken, 2 for 3. He did miss 1 field goal, but again, he's doing great things. Just, 3 years ago, no one would have thought we'd be, or 2 years ago, 3 seasons ago, no one thought we'd be saying that after what happened with Bill O'Brien's first year. At Penn State, Sam Ficken was the GOAT, and now he's pretty much a hero for this Penn State team because the rest of the offense just cannot do anything. But as has been said for the past couple of years, the defense is where it's at. I think that we've had one down defensive year, but this unit is playing well together. And Justin and I have touched on this before. The team in general is incredibly young, and we don't know. We actually won't be losing all that many players for next year's squad. So there's a lot to look forward to in Happy Valley. They're 5-4. Majority of the sanctions are gone, and they can become bowl eligible next week since they are allowed to play in a bowl game. They have to beat one of Temple next week, 2 weeks at Illinois, or 3 weeks home against Michigan State. One of those games must be a win to get the bowl eligibility. You hope that it happens next week with the chance to also beat Illinois, maybe get the 7 wins on the year. And after dropping 4 in a row, if this team would finish 7-5, I think a lot of us would take that with the recruiting class still sticking together, looking good. Hopefully that goes that way through February. And then hopefully next year, the 2015 Penn State season, second year of the James Franklin era, second good recruiting class, things should start looking up as the scholarship numbers rebound. And hopefully Penn State can capitalize. But again, Penn State beat Indiana yesterday 13-7 and will host Temple at Beaver Stadium this coming Saturday at noon. All right, a couple other college football things to talk about here. I think I'll show you the video quickly here. The first one up is in the Utah-Oregon game. It was at Utah, and it was there was one play in particular that just left a lot of people scratching their heads. No one really knew what was going on first. Thankfully, the defense knew what was going on, and they were able to capitalize on a mistake. Now, the outcome of this game was an Oregon Ducks victory over the Utah Utes, 51-27. Oregon ranked 4th, Utah 17th, so it was a big game. Keeps Oregon in the hunt for the the playoff that we'll see at the end of the season. But this was a play from the game that everyone's talking about today.
Travis Wilson to pass on 3rd down and 5. A lot of time looking down the field. It's got a man open. Down the field. It's caught at the 35, at the 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. It's a touchdown. Kalen Clay. Hey, why not just do that? I think they got some balance in the passing game. The play is still alive. Oregon's running the play. Oregon's running into the end zone, and they're saying it's a touchdown back the other way.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? They said that Kalen Clay let go of the ball before he crossed the plane.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
And Oregon runs it back for a touchdown. What?
We've got to see this on the replay. And instead of this game being 14-0 Utah, it's going to end up being 7-7.
So not a great play for Utah there. They were supposed to be up 14-0 on the number 4 Ducks, and instead of that, really a 14-point swing, it ends up being 7-7. As you can see, Utah wide receiver Clay clearly dropped the ball a good yard and a half short of the end zone, started celebrating. We've seen this before with Deshaun Jackson, which I'm sure most of your listeners are familiar with. He did it once in the NFL, I believe on a Monday night game. It might even have been against the Redskins, who he's with now. Dropped the ball going in for a touchdown, and then everyone flashed back to his days at Cal. However, he actually did it in, I think it was like an All-American game coming out of high school, and he tried to actually really rub it in by doing like a somersault. I should have pulled up the video and I forgot, but he did this in both either high school and college, or high school in the NFL, obviously, but Deshaun Jackson. So that's what people are thinking about when you see Utah wide receiver Clay. Huge 70-plus yard touchdown to really get your team an edge against a high-powered offense in Oregon. Would be up 14-0 and instead turn the ball over. No one seemed to know what happened except a few Oregon Duck players, and they're able to turn it around and go the distance to tie the game at 7. So that was one of the things that people were talking about from college football yesterday. Then the other was the end of the Auburn-Texas A&M game. Now this was huge because Auburn was one of the top teams in the nation. They were ranked 3rd and were hosting Texas A&M, unranked Texas A&M, who were 6-3 at the time. And it came down to the last few minutes. Auburn had the ball going into score, and then this happened on 2 out of the final 4 plays.
Texas A&M had 2 defenders on the outside. My guess is they feed them inside again here.
2nd and goal, Artis Payne. Fumble, loose ball, Auburn's on top. Artis Payne got back on top of the fumbled exchange between Marshall and now we'll check. Touchdown! Texas A&M football.
Heels and play not to lose this game, because that's how you get yourself beat. I think they need to come after it. The ball got snapped though.
Loose ball. Did Auburn get on top? Aggie football.
And another mental error by this Auburn team.
So that happened twice in 4 plays. Texas A&M gets lucky with Auburn miscues. Third-ranked team in the nation, Auburn, who was 7-1 coming into the game against Texas A&M. And in the final few minutes, Auburn's getting ready to score. Texas A&M recovers a fumble at the 1-yard line on just a botched handoff. Then, after the defense holds for the Tigers, they force an Aggies punt. Nick Marshall lines up, starts changing the play or pointing out, a blitz or changing something on the line, and the center snaps it to him. It bounces off his legs, and Texas A&M recovers and runs out the clock and pulls the upset where they beat Auburn 41-38. It's just incredible to see some of those miscues in the highest level of college football on some of the most important teams in terms of the national race for the first college football playoff, where Oregon got lucky and made out in that play against Utah, whereas it's the other way around. Auburn, the team right in front of Oregon, falls because of some miscues at the end of the game. So not a great day, banner day for a few of the nation's top teams. But in the end of the day, Penn State won, and that's all that we really care about here on the Joe Mays and J-Raff show. So let's move on and talk a little bit about Wilson football here before we do our NFL talk. And Wilson played the 16th seed in the District 3 Quad A playoffs. It was at John Gursky Stadium in West Lawn, Pennsylvania, having Wilson be the number 1 seed, the only undefeated team in Quad A District 3, going 10-0 in the season for back-to-back years. They earned the right to play the lowest seed, the last team to make it into the playoffs, which was the Carlisle Thundering Herd. Now, I believe I mentioned it last week on the show that this wasn't an ordinary number 16 seed. They were coming in off of a big victory over, actually, Harrisburg, who was seeded, I believe, 13th in this field. Carlisle beat Harrisburg last week, the week before the playoffs, 41-0. So they were definitely riding high. They had a high-powered spread offense led by a senior quarterback, a big guy, nice arm, and he's got an incredible sophomore wide receiver that he's been throwing to. And Carlisle, certainly the way they were playing and the talent they had, much better than a 16 seed. And they played like it on Friday night. Now, Wilson was able to pull out the victory. They beat the Thundering Herd 21-7, but it was not easy. They battled the entire first half. Defense was strong. They were opportunistic. They forced a couple fourth down incompletions that would have given that Carlisle had excellent opportunities to score on. Perhaps if it was a little less windy, a couple of those would have been field goal attempts, but Carlisle went for it both times. The defense was able to hold their ground and forced a turnover. Wilson offense wasn't clicking at the beginning. Finally, near the end of the second quarter, on a flip of the field position, the defense forced a punt. Connor Howell, the punt returner, picked it up and took it to around the Carlisle 30. So excellent field position. They worked their way down the field as time was expiring, and Connor Howell actually finished it off on an end around or split end rush touchdown 7 yards out to put Wilson up 7-0 going into halftime. Fortunately, Wilson had won the toss and deferred, and they were going to end up receiving once they got back from the break. And a big return by junior Bailey McElroy set Wilson up at midfield. And on the first play from scrimmage to start the second half, Shane Dantzler, who couldn't get too much going at all in the first half, he had 18 carries in the first half, but not a ton of yardage. Very workmanlike. I think he was up in the 90s on 18 carries. So not too bad, but they just couldn't burst the big one. Well, he finally got it going. First play from scrimmage in the second half, 50-yard touchdown, bouncing it outside the right side on the Carlisle sideline. He goes the distance to stretch the Wilson lead to 14-0. Defense was able to put up a few stops, and then Wilson finally got the ball down into Carlisle territory again, and on fourth and 10, 4th and 11 from the Carlisle 23, Jake Templin was able to find junior wide receiver John Fox and put the Bulldogs up 21-0. Now, with such a high-powered offense in Carlisle, the game obviously wasn't over here in the third quarter, and Carlisle did put up a score to cut the lead to 21-7, but Wilson defense, again, stood strong. They gave up the one touchdown, but when Carlisle was trying to cut the deficit even more after recovering the onside kick after they had scored a touchdown, defense held penalties and stout play forced a punt. They didn't get too much more. Wilson actually had a shot to put themselves up 28-7, but got stopped on 3 or 4 consecutive plays inside the 2 to score a touchdown, and they couldn't do it. But Wilson escapes with a win. Again, that Carlisle is much better than a 16 seed. They deserve to be higher. Now, obviously, they lost 5 games during the year. They played tough opponents. They lost to a couple of teams that Wilson lost to. They lost to Central Dauphin. They lost to Central Dauphin East by a point. They beat up on Harrisburg, who just put up a huge fight against CD East again. CD East is the 4 seed. So there's a lot of talent there. Carlisle, they probably should have been a top 10 squad based on their talent. But Wilson got the victory. They'll move on. They'll play next week again at Gursky, since they're the number 1 seed. Wilson's going to welcome in a familiar foe in Manheim Township, who they beat a month ago, 28-14. Township was the runner-up in the Lancaster Lebanon League Section 1, having lost only to Wilson in league play. So it's going to be a battle. It's definitely not an easy path for the Bulldogs to make it back to Hershey, where they were in 2011 and 2012, winning in 2012. Once again, it's going to be a potent passing attack coming to West Lawn. Township features a stellar quarterback, a bunch of good wide receivers, and a coaching staff that knows Wilson. Generally speaking, in the long term, or the 9+ seasons now that Coach Doms has been on the sideline, in rematches, Wilson has the upper hand. I believe the only time that Wilson's faced the same team twice in the season and has split or lost both was back in 2006, I think Coach Dom's first year, when they lost to Mifflin the first game and lost to Mifflin the last game. But since then, if Wilson loses to a team during the regular season, which also doesn't happen that often, thinking back to 2012 Harrisburg, then gets to replay them again in the playoffs, 2012 Harrisburg, Wilson comes out on top. And they also, when they beat a team in the regular season and play them again in the playoffs, they always come out on top. They did it to Manheim Township a few years ago, and they did it to Penn Manor a few years ago as well. Actually, just last year, they beat Penn Manor twice in the span of 3 or 4 weeks. So here we are once again playing Manheim Township at home. So it should be another battle with Mark Evans' Blue Streaks. They want this one. Now, it wouldn't count as ending Wilson's LL victory streak because it's a playoff game, not a regular season game. But no matter, Manheim Township wants to move on. They think they have the talent to be a higher seed. They get to prove it against Wilson Friday night. The winner of the Wilson-Manheim Township game will face the winner of CD East versus, who they playing? CD East beat Harrisburg. They will be playing, I should probably just pull up the bracket here before I forget. Okay, CD East plays Hempfield. Hempfield actually had, I think, the only first-round upset in District 3. No, I'm sorry, there were 2. The 5 seed, Dallastown, fell to Hempfield, the 12 seed, 36-21. So 3 out of the 4 in the top part of the bracket that Wilson's in are LL teams, Wilson, Township, and Hempfield. Hempfield will face CD East on Saturday at George Ebersol Stadium. It's in Central Dauphin Middle School. And the other upset was Lower Dauphin, the 11 seed, and the defending District 3 champions, upset Cedar Cleft, the 6 seed. So the other half of the bracket in District 3 will be 2 seed Governor Mifflin hosting 7 seed Cumberland Valley. That should be an interesting game. Both are ground and pound offenses. Mifflin seems to be a little more splashy or be able to score more points. Cumberland Valley, strong D and plotting running game. That is an interesting matchup. The other one is Central Dauphin, the 3 seed. They beat up on Reading to move on. And again, they'll be playing Lower Dauphin, the defending District 3 champions, who squeaked by Cedar Cliff 21-18. So Wilson Manheim Township winner gets the winner of CD East Hempfield. So should Wilson beat Manheim Township, they would be guaranteed another rematch. They beat CD East in week 2 this year, 31-14, and they beat Hempfield in week 6, I believe, in West Lawn, 28-7. So no matter what, if Wilson beats Township, they will be playing either CD East or Hempfield, who they've already played. And as the way it works out, unless Cumberland Valley or Lower Dauphin are able to win out, if Wilson continues to win and plays at Hershey, 2 out of the 4 teams left on that side of the bracket, Wilson has also already played, being 1, Governor Mifflin, or number 3 seed Central Dauphin, who Wilson beat in week 3, 14-12. So a lot of familiar faces left in the District 3 Quad A football bracket. Hopefully the Bulldogs can continue their winning ways and get all their guys back healthy. We saw the return of John Fox and Shane Dansel this week, but they were without junior wide receiver and cornerback Jake Gaiman. I don't know the status of him for next week's game, but hopefully he's ready to go, especially with Manheim Township's high-powered offense coming in. Township beat up on Exeter 45-14 this past week in the first round. So, all right, I think it's time now to move on to NFL action, although, hold on, let's see, I got a text here. Oh, I think I did answer this correct. We got a text from Bill asking about the upper-seeded teams, the better teams. Did any of them lose in District 3 Quad A playoffs? And I mentioned that Hempfield, the 12 seed, upset Dallastown, the York area champions. Hempfield, who was, I believe, maybe tied for third best team. They probably were the third best team in Lancaster 11 League Section 1. They upset Dallastown, and Lower Dauphin, the defending District 3 champs from last year, upset Cedar Cliff. So 12 beat 5 and 11 beat 6. Kind of familiar if you're March Madness fans a lot of times, especially the 12-5 matchups. Those seem to be hot ones to pick upsets, and it happened here in the 2014 District 3 Quad A playoffs. So again, Wilson hosts Manheim Township, CD East hosts Hempfield, Governor Mifflin hosts Cumberland Valley, and Central Dauphin hosts Lower Dauphin. 3 of those games are Friday night, with the CD East Hempfield game being played on Saturday. All right, so now some NFL talk. Let's get caught up on the action. And the Thursday night game was a bit of a shocker. I know the people that I talked to about NFL action all favored Cincinnati. I think most people favored Cincinnati. The Bengals started the season very strong. Then they got beat down by the Patriots about a month ago or so and haven't really recovered. They tied the Panthers. They've dropped a few games. And they were actually booted out of first place in the AFC North by the Browns, and who came to Cincinnati and just put on a show enough to get them the victory, 24-3. The Bengals' offense was awful. Andy Dalton was historically bad in that game. And the Browns, after today's results, are actually now all alone in first place in the AFC North. So, an interesting season. I know a lot of people say the AFC North may be the best division in football. I disagree. I think they're just all equally inconsistent. I don't think any of them are bad teams, because I think when they're having a good week, each of them could honestly make the Super Bowl. I truly believe that. I mean, just look what the Steelers did the previous 2 weeks. That's frightening. The Ravens had a couple, 2 or 3 games in a row that they looked incredibly strong. The Bengals to start the year. Couple weeks here, look at the Browns did to the Steelers a month ago. You know, it all fluctuates. It's who's hot at the right time. Any of those 4 teams, honestly, probably could represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, but they better be playing well at the right time, because all of them could also be kicked out in the first round of the playoffs. But right now, the Browns are on top, and Cleveland's celebrating. The Sunday NFL action this week, we'll start out with a couple snoozers here. Falcons-Buccaneers, NFC South. No one really does want to win that division. Now, the Falcons got a victory today. I think they had lost 5 in a row. They beat down on the Buccaneers 27-17. They're actually losing 17-16 at one point before they were able to get ahead of Tampa Bay and get their first win in, about 6 or 7 weeks. Probably maybe the biggest upset based on the reaction or based on the results of the last 2 weeks, was the Steelers going to the Jets. The Jets thought of as one of the worst teams in the NFL, having only one win, lost 8 games in a row. Now, it was at home. Maybe that was a bit of a sign. The Steelers were on a 2-week high. Big Ben had thrown 12 touchdowns over the previous 2 games. Well, they were only able to score 13 total points, and 10 of them came in the fourth quarter as they were trying to claw their way back. Turnovers did in the Steelers as the Jets raced to a 17-0 lead in the first quarter, and they held on for the 20-13 victory. So the Jets have won their first game since week 1 of the season, and the Steelers now drop behind the Browns in the race for the AFC North title. Also pacing them in the AFC North, the Ravens got a victory today over the Titans. They were down 7-0, but the Ravens were able to score a touchdown in the second, third, and fourth quarters to get a victory that they needed. They were kind of going through the motions. They didn't look like a dominant team, but the Titans aren't very good, and that was good enough today for Baltimore. But they'll have to play better if they hope to unseat the Browns and gain sole possession of first place and a division title in the near future. We had an overtime game today, and that was between the 49ers and Saints, 2 teams a lot of people thought could possibly be NFC challengers to the Seahawks entering the season. I was a little bit down on the 49ers, but both Justin and I were very, very high on the Saints. Now, this game ended up going into overtime as the Saints botched away a few chances to secure a victory. And in overtime, a sack of Drew Brees resulting in a fumble led the 49ers to kick a game-winning field goal. There's some issues surrounding the end of the game as it looked like the Saints may have scored a game-clinching touchdown on the final play on like a Hail Mary heave to Jimmy Graham, but he was flagged for offensive pass interference, and it kind of looks like the 49ers cornerback, I believe it was Parrish Cox, almost flops to draw a flag, and it worked. And guess what? The 49ers now won because of it. I hate flopping. The little bit of college basketball and NBA that I watch, when I see it, I just roll my eyes and want to turn the TV off. It's one of the reasons I can't get into soccer in any capacity, at least men's soccer, is watching these guys just flop around. It's disgusting trying to get those calls, and I hate it in hockey as well. And there's a team out in western Pennsylvania that's notorious for it, and it just drives me absolutely insane. These are supposed to be hard-nosed guys, especially in hockey and football, and you're out here flopping around. It's just ridiculous. So I don't know if the NFL will have anything to say about it, but it absolutely impeded progress and the outcome of the game today. The 49ers went to New Orleans and got a victory. That's huge for the 49ers. It gets them to 5-4, and now will give them a tiebreaker against the Saints if that's what it comes down to in the wild card race. Over in London, the third and final game in the England series this year was Dallas visiting the Jaguars. And Dallas finally rebounded after losing 2 games in a row. They got their win entering a bye week. They get the victory 31-17 over Jacksonville. Dez Bryant went off, and now some people are calling him the best wide receiver in the league. He's obviously in the top 5, but everything's what have you done for me lately? And Dez Bryant is the flavor of the week at this moment. Unfortunately, for me as a Dolphins fan, coming off of a 2 or 3 game winning streak, the Dolphins went to Detroit and it looked like they had victory, and then the defense, which was being hyped up all week as possibly the best in the NFL, I wasn't really buying into it, but the Lions offense shredded the Dolphins defense near the end of the game, scored a touchdown with under a minute to play, and the Dolphins had burned all their timeouts, so there was no time for Ryan Tannehill. It wasn't a great game at all for either side of the Dolphins, offense or defensively speaking. Defense couldn't stop them when it mattered, although they did have a interception that they set up one of the Dolphins' scores. But Miami needs to return home and regroup because they have Buffalo coming in, who's also coming off a loss to the Chiefs. Kansas City was able to hold on and beat the Bills today 17-13. So Miami-Buffalo is a big game next week in terms of AFC wildcard positioning. I'm not sure either team is going to be able to catch New England for the division crown, but one of the teams should be in position to challenge for one of the wildcard spots. And the game next week is probably, it's obviously huge for the Bills coming off a loss. They can't suffer another loss, but Miami's already lost to Buffalo once. They really need to get this victory over Buffalo next week. It's actually Thursday night, so both teams coming off a loss have a short week. Buffalo visits Miami next week. the winner will improve to, I believe, 6-4. At least the Dolphins would if they would win, and would have the upper hand over the Bills entering the final few weeks of the season here coming up. We're past the halfway mark now. It's hard to believe, but we definitely are. And as I mentioned before, nope, we already did that game, so we're gonna move on here. All right, the late game actions. There's a lot of buys this week, by the way. Patriots, Chargers, Texans, Colts, Redskins, Vikings, all on a bye this week. So limited action going on in the NFL. But the late games, while the Raiders were putting up a fight early, the Broncos have unleashed themselves now and are up 41-10 with 2 minutes to play in the fourth quarter. The Cardinals, though down early, have stormed back and are now leading 24-14. Arizona scored 14 fourth quarter points to take the lead over the Rams. There's 5 minutes to go in that one. The Cardinals would improve to 8-1 with a win. That would be the best mark in the NFL. In Seattle, the Giants the Seahawks have now taken the lead over the Giants with 14 fourth quarter points of their own. The Giants were up 17-14 at halftime. Seahawks tied it in the third quarter, 17-17, and then they opened it up here, 14 points in the fourth. They now lead 31-17, and now they just scored again. So the Seahawks are going to improve to 6-3, while the Giants will drop to 3-6. I believe the Giants lost 3 in a row, they won 3 in a row, and now they've lost 3 in a row. So that's Tom Coughlin and the Giants, ladies and gentlemen. Don't know if we'll see him in New York after this year. Seahawks will get a needed win to keep themselves a game in front of the 49ers, but obviously if the Cardinals hold on to win, they'll be 2 games back of Arizona still. The Sunday night game, a big NFC North matchup. The Packers need a win to keep pace with the Lions, who beating the Dolphins today improved to 7-2. The Packers are at 5-3. The Bears 3-5. If the Bears want any hope of winning the division, they have to win this game. If they lose, they drop to 3-6. Good news, it's on the road. Chicago's been better on the road because they haven't won a home game yet this year. And one of the teams that beat them was Green Bay. So we'll see if Chicago, coming off a bye week, and the Packers coming off a bye week, can put up some fireworks tonight in an NFC North battle on NBC. The Monday night game features your local team, the Eagles, at 6-2. They host the Panthers, who are 3-5-1. The Eagles are undefeated at home this season so far. And I said to Justin last week, even with Nick Foles going down, as well as D'Amico Ryans, people were all excited about Mark Sanchez and how well he played last week. There's just something saying to me that this is, I don't want to say it's a trap game for the Eagles, because I don't think they're necessarily looking ahead, but I think they could underestimate the Panthers. I don't think the Eagles are going to go undefeated at home. This, for some reason, just screaming to me that this is going to be a closer game than a lot of people think. In Carolina, maybe they'll even win the game. I'm not a Sanchez supporter in any facet, but if anyone's going to make a quarterback look good, it seems to be Chip Kelly's offense. So we'll see what happens there. But the Eagles host the Panthers tomorrow night, and I think that is all the NFL action here. That covers pretty much everything. And it looks like Justin's water polo banquet is definitely running way long. So doesn't look like he'll be joining us this evening here. So let's see what I got here. All right. So he was not able to make it this evening, but I'll do the announcement for him and congratulate him and Adam, our basketball analysts that we have here on occasion. They are the coaches of the Wilson High School boys water polo team. Adam has been a head coach there since 2010. Justin's been there for a year or two before that. And this year, the state tournament was at North Penn this weekend, Friday and Saturday. And the Bulldogs were able to play in the state title game against undefeated North Penn last night in their own pool. And Wilson played their best game of the year. Justin told me before the game that they would have to play the best game of the season, and if they were going to beat North Penn and win the title. And as you can see from that graphic I have up right now, they did it. Wilson beat North Penn in the state championship 14-9. It's Wilson's first state title since 2010, Adam's first year as head coach. The Bulldogs actually won back-to-back state titles in 2009 and 10, and now they get back on top of the podium in 2014. So congratulations to both of them. on winning another state title for the Wilson Bulldogs boys water polo team. And I know a couple of guys on those teams, most importantly, Matt Ginter, who played with me at Wilson West football in 2010. He changed over to water polo, and things definitely worked out for him as finishing his career as a Bulldog water polo player as a state champion. So congratulations again to Justin, Adam, and all of the Wilson Bulldog water polo players on winning the 2014 state title. Okay, let's see here. I think that about covers everything. We will have a show next week. We'll be talking NFL Week 11, hopefully recapping a Penn State victory over Temple that gets them bowl eligible. And I do have a couple shout-outs here. Obviously, we just talked about the boys water polo team winning the state title. That's great. A couple birthdays this past week. Can't remember if I mentioned them at the end of last week's show, so I'll do it here. Happy birthday to Chris Hartman, my father-in-law, Ken, and a couple of Kelly's friends and my friends, Mike and Chelsea. A lot of birthdays in November, so hopefully I'm not forgetting anyone. And if I missed anyone in this upcoming week, we'll get you next week. So I think that's everything. Thanks for joining me. This wraps up the 154th episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. You can tune in every Sunday at 6:30 for our take on sports. Until next time, I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.